right, Matt, we're here with our cups of coffee. Welcome, everyone. This is going to be a little longer form interview. So if we're going to have it in the YouTube page where if you scroll your mouse, you could pick which part of the video you want to hop to learn a little bit more about what we're up to. But we have some questions today with Matt, Pastor Matt, and so you've been talking this up for a few weeks now. What's the big announcement, or some people probably might already know, but to give us a little bit understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, so the big announcement that we're really looking at is a plan for reconnection through indoor in-person worship. We are targeting a date right now of May 30th when we will have our first indoor in-person worship service for 2021. As you are well aware, we have not met in-person indoors in 2021 on this capacity that we're looking at. So that is what we're looking forward to. I know that several of you are probably already aware, or you figured it out. It wasn't that hard to figure out at what we might be hinting about at this point during the pandemic. But that's the date that we're looking at and moving forward.
May 30th, right?
May 30th.
May 30th, all right.
So about 6 weeks away, 6 or 7 weeks away.
Okay, so you've used this word reconnecting instead of the word reopening. So haven't we already been connecting for the past year in a way? Like why use this word versus reopening or anything else? Like what's something special about this word that you want us to embrace as a church?
Yeah, so I think there are several things going on there. I've said to you and Kyle and Donna and others that I think language really does matter, and the language that we use around this is going to matter. And so, for example, whenever I talk about a worship guide, I don't call it a bulletin, I call it a worship guide. When I talk about where the pulpit is and where the choir sits, I don't talk about it as a stage, it's a platform. And so in this case, when we're talking about reconnecting versus what some places might call reopening, and it's going to sound trite, but it's also true, we didn't close anything. In fact, we went from a Friday morning, are we going to have church in person, worship in person, to online, and by Sunday we had switched everything online, and we've gone through it ever since. We have had somebody like Ian Blaylock who hasn't missed a single Sunday. He could easily say to us, nope, everything's been open in some sense. But I also think there's the reality that, yes, technology has helped connect us. But I also think that we've learned some things during this pandemic about a lack of connection that's happened at KBC over the years, where we know some people really, really well. And then sometimes we actually get into committee meetings with people and realize, I'm not sure I know all these people. We looked at the faces on the Zoom screen and we thought, who is that person? And so I think that idea of reconnecting matters in the sense that we're having to do this differently, but we're also having to rebuild some relationships that maybe weren't there beforehand. So worship isn't just about Sanctuaries open, y'all come, but it's really about building our relationship with Christ and with one another. So that's the term.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because it's not just this idea of like how we're transitioning from this one phase to the next, but it's actually a broader, this is something that we're going to be focusing on and embracing for years to come. We want everyone to feel connected. I remember having some conversations with people and they're like, I love coming to church because of the music or because of, how I can serve in a way. But if I've stopped to think about it, I don't know how many close friends I have here.
Right.
And so this idea of reconnecting with one another and maybe connecting with people for the first time in a way where this isn't just a place where you can serve or you can have a great worship experience, but it can also become a community where you can grow and feel like you belong.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's great. So worship's on, we're going to look in, we're doing some form of in-person worship on May the 30th. So let's talk a little logistics here. What does that look like for us? How many people are going to be here in the sanctuary? what do I need to do if I want to show up for in person?
Great. So, yeah, with everything that we're having to do going forward, we are having to talk about logistics and how to make things happen. Mm-hmm. So the short answer to your question is it's going to look very different than it did March 8th, 2020. We are right now, based on CDC guidelines and literally walking through the sanctuary yesterday and measuring things out, we said, look, we think we can fit 44 people in here, socially distanced, with masks, in order to do worship together. So basically, we will divide each pew in half. We will leave one pew open between each pew we use, and we will stagger people throughout the sanctuary. Now, we of course had to figure out, well, we could do this one way or we could do this a different way, but we can't assume that each group that's going to use the pew is the exact same. So we had to deal with that dynamism.
Because you have some people that have a family of 5 and they could all sit shoulder to shoulder because they're in their own family group, but you have some people that are just like they're single or they're on their own, or and they would have one pew to themselves because we don't want to fit them shoulder to shoulder with somebody else.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So we're thinking about that. Also, people want to sing, and they want to worship together. Some of us, as I jokingly said last week, have learned how bad we sing, and we need some people around us. And so, if we will allow for the social distancing that we've that has been recommended, if we allow for the use of masks, and the other thing is if something comes up, if the CDC says with a mask and 3 foot of social distancing, singing is mitigated to a certain amount, then we can change that number. So we're constantly going to be looking at it. We are going to ask you to RSVP. So
Okay.
we're going to ask you to sign up, okay? And for the first 4 weeks, we're going to ask you to sign up before Thursday. So Thursday night at some point, we're going to cut off signups, and that's primarily so that Kyle and Taylor and I can look at it and go, okay, how are we going to configure this? My assumption is after 4 weeks, people will be trained. They'll understand, here's how we're going to do it. There are a lot of smart people. They'll figure it all out. But so you might be able to sign up on Saturday night. The other thing that I would just throw out there have been groups that have been able to meet and to lead in worship throughout the pandemic. Thank you to our ensemble groups, to the chancel ringers, to the choirs, to the individuals who gave of their time and talents. Y'all have led us well, and we are grateful. We also have people, for example, one family I know that doesn't even have internet. And so they haven't been able to even worship through the online platform. And so I would encourage you, if you have had some opportunities to be in the sanctuary to worship, to give it a couple weeks before you sign up, or maybe wait till Thursday evening. Wait till Thursday evening. If you look on there and only 2 people have signed up and you really want to be there, great. Sign up. There's plenty of room for you. But just think about, this isn't just about what I want, but really thinking about our neighbor and that sort of thing.
Well, because, part of what we've been doing as a church and with live streaming is we've been trying to care for everyone in our community. We also, though, don't, if you wait to sign up and you decide not to sign up for Thursday, we don't want 2 people. And if there's 40 of you that do want to come, right? So, you can always, everybody can always shoot us an email.
Yeah,
or give us a call.
Yes.
Yes. So RSVP, that's going to be on the website.
Yes,
right?
that will be set up.
Just like if you attended the outdoor worship service on Easter, you can go on, or you can always shoot an email to the office and we can sign you up that way, or give us a call. But we'll definitely have that on the website available. Yes. Now, is it 44 people in total or 44 people participating in worship?
So we are planning for 44 people participating in worship. In addition to those 44 people, are going to be the pastoral staff as we lead. They're going to be the accompanists, so you would have your organist, you would have your pianist, you would have our videographer up in the balcony, you would have audio technician, and then you're going to have a deacon of the week as well who will be helping lead in worship. So we're anticipating 9 to 10 people as worship leaders with the other 44. So if you hear that, we're not saying 44 minus the people who are leading, but it'll be more closer to a total of 54 people.
So max 54.
Yes.
Got it. So you mentioned people want to sing together. Yes. Is singing going to be, some people might be concerned, you might be concerned and be like, I don't know if coming here and singing is going to be a risk. What have you and Kyle been doing to look into whether or not singing in person is going to be a risk or not?
So Kyle can answer this question in much more detail based on his constant communication with different colleges and universities and their choral programs. But on a simple note, we at Kirkwood Baptist Church, you all have seen the videos, we have had the choir meet with masks and spread out, and they've led us in worship. So we think with social distancing and masking, we are mitigating the risk as much as we can. I do not want to say at this point that there is zero risk. There is always risk, and I don't want to make it sound like things are rosy. I do think, though, that by taking the recommended 6 feet, by creating the distance that we can in this space, we really can do this in a way that's not going to put people at high risk. I would think this is a very low risk thing.
Great. Let's talk a little bit more about ensembles. So singing's not going to necessarily, there is a risk. We're not going to say there's no risk, but we're doing everything to mitigate that risk. We feel confident that having people spaced apart is fairly safe, having a mask on the whole time while singing. What about ensembles? Are we going to have the choir or the brass, handbells? What about all of them starting on May the 30th?
So we've been talking about this quite a bit. Our ensembles have, in a lot of ways, carried us through this time, through the pandemic. They've been practicing, they've been preparing, they've been leading. We are incredibly grateful for them. As we make this transition, it is going to become harder at the beginning to say, put the choir all up in the loft and sing together and lead in worship through hymns, or to have a choral piece. And so what we're trying to do is to give some time, both for guidance to come out, like what do churches need to be doing according to the CDC, as far as very strict guidance, but also to give Kyle and others some time to figure out, well, what would this look like? So instead of the choir being in the loft together, could the choir sit with their families and then join and lead at the front? What does this look like? And so we do need a little bit of time as we transition to indoor in-person worship at a limited capacity, where we won't be utilizing those groups just in the early portion of this. And it is different. Handbells exert less air than singing. So, it is going to look different. So as we move into, we're not getting rid of any of our ensembles, but we are going to have to pause for a little bit, give everyone a break. There may be continued practicing and stuff like that as need be, but at least for June and July, looking more towards August to resume those ensembles leading.
Yeah, and we want to create this space. We don't want to take up half of the people that can come for an ensemble when we first start, because maybe some of you have been at home all for the past year, and this is your opportunity to be back in the sanctuary and be in the space itself. And that's beginning to take a little bit more priority for our congregation. So
absolutely,
that's great. Some people might be asking, hey, do I have to be vaccinated to show up? Are you going to keep a list of vaccines? We all love how people some people are like, wearing shirts, I got vaccines, and other people are like, don't talk to me at all about vaccines. How are we as a church going to approach that conversation? I'm sure there's a few people that are wondering that in some way.
Great question. I had a plan for a vaccine passport system for KBC, but I scrapped that.
Okay. Why'd you scrap it?
We scrapped it because we are not going to use that as something we really value in the sense of allowing people to gather back together. So no one's going to ask you, although many of you have been posting, whether or not you've been vaccinated, where you are on the vaccination process. We're not keeping a list. We're not checking you at the door or anything like that. I will say, I think everyone should go get vaccinated. And I think it is important, not just for care for yourself, but for care for your neighbor. Go get vaccinated. I think it's the best path forward and offers the most options for all of us. That said, there are people who have good reasons for not being vaccinated and who are not going to be excluded from the opportunity of worship. In the same way that before this pandemic, there are churches all over the place that use all kinds of boundaries and restrictions on who gets to lead in worship and who gets to do this and that sort of thing. We haven't ever been a place like that. So if you want to tell me you're fully vaccinated, great. I will congratulate you on that. I will not record your name in the book of life. But that's not what we're going to use.
But that being said, we are going to be framing our protocols or our logistics around not even thinking like, well, if everyone was vaccinated, we would do X, Y, and Z, right? We're approaching this from what the CDC is telling for us, regardless of whether or not you're vaccinated,
right.
Out of safety for all, because for us, that's the safest way. That's always, priority has been safe. And also, like, that's not really where we feel like we want to spend our energy and time and focus of like, okay, we gotta make sure everybody's, all of this is like, look, we're gonna make sure everybody's safe, regardless if you're vaccinated or not. And we're gonna take all the precautions that's necessary to do that.
That's right. That's right. And again, I just think vaccines and masks have been politicized, and I think that is a problem. I think it actually is part of what's making this so difficult for people.
Yeah.
And so I don't want us to get into that place. And so this allows people to, if you feel like this is an opportunity you want to try, it's open to you regardless of your vaccination status.
So maybe someone skipped to this section, or maybe you've been watching the whole time, but I think this is a lingering question for some. Why now? Okay, like, some people may be wondering, why have we been waiting this long? And there's others in our church that may be saying, we've waited this long. Why now? Why are we now just like, why don't we wait longer? Talk to us a little bit about why this is the time that we feel like we want to start this new way of reconnecting.
Yeah. So part of this reconnection plan is about timing. So beginning Friday on April 9th, if you live in the state of Missouri and you want to get a vaccine, you can get a vaccine. Which does mean that many of you, should you choose to do that, could be fully vaccinated before the May 30th worship service, which might be the reassurance that many of us need. For me personally, that was a big piece of this, of how are we going to gather a bunch of people together and put other people at risk? How is I going to put you and Kyle at risk, and that sort of thing, for Donna when she returns. So part of that is that just schedule. The other part is when I started talking to people and asking for feedback, the emphasis was on, we want to do some form of in-person worship.
Okay.
So could that be outside? Yes. But doing an outside worship service every single week is a whole other ball of wax. And it doesn't allow for some things that people do really value in our worship services, like the organ, hearing the piano in the same way.
Or like just sitting in this space, like the space itself has something, special and holy about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, one person described it during this time as I had to go visit my pew, right? And it is. So we want to allow for that to happen. We also think we're at a place where we know enough and there's enough evidence to do this in a way that will keep people safe as possible. Also, we're through the Easter season, and once you start rolling from Epiphany into Lent, into Easter, the church calendar takes over. And we weren't at a place where we could just pull the brakes and say, okay, everything that we've got planned from Easter back to here, let's just go throw it all and rethink it.
Yeah.
So there are several timing pieces there.
We got some introverts in our church. We got a couple. And some people, not just introverts, but some people really enjoy just like kicking back at home, drinking a nice cup of coffee, not having to get dressed up and wake up early. Maybe they enjoy watching the service in the evenings or on another day of the week. What do you have to, some people that are like, I don't know if I really want to come in person. What do you have to say about that? And is the online experience going to change it all throughout the coming year as we start to make these changes?
Yeah, so I would say as we transition back to an indoor in-person service, it will change a slight amount in that, like right now when I preach, I don't look at the congregation because some weeks it's just a couple people.
It's just me.
I keep focused on the camera. So that would be a small change.
Yeah.
But overall, if based on what we were doing prior to the pandemic, because we've been doing it for a year prior to the pandemic, we've been streaming the service, looking there more towards our homebound members or possibly on icy days, people who felt like, I can be in worship, but not physically, so that they didn't risk getting out and that sort of thing. But overall, it's going to stay the same. We're in fact making some improvements that will hopefully enhance it a little bit, make some of our streaming and mixing and all of those sorts of things better. At the same time, we are not trying to cultivate our online community as Kirkwood Baptist Church in the sense that we're trying to see how many page likes we can get or how many feeds we can get, at the most time. Though my ego would love that.
Yeah.
But what does it mean to be gathered physically in person and present? I think there is something very different about a worship service when you sit with people, when you have a chance to connect with them in a multitude of ways, through singing together, through praying together, through scripture reading, but even through the passing of the peace, of getting to see a physical person. I heard people say last week during the Easter service, I worshiped with people I haven't seen in a year. And I think if we've learned anything in this year as a church, it's that there is something about space and place and gathering together. So you will have the chance to watch it online with your lazy pants and your cup of coffee. I completely understand that. And I hope as we are able to expand capacity that people will feel that call, that want to gather together.
Yeah, because I would think we would want the in-person experience in the physical space with your community to be of more value to you than just if you were sitting at home, right?
Yeah.
Because there's something special, like if you can be here, right? There's something special about that. And if we go back to some of the things we've heard from people of like, I've been here for a while, but I don't feel like I have close friends. I don't feel like I really love this community. I can't think of anywhere else to be, but how is that going to change or cultivate if we're all just kind of sitting at home in our PJs watching worship? It doesn't. It doesn't in the same way, or it's going to take longer than a person's lifetime to do it. Okay, so as a senior pastor, what are some of the values either that we've had as a church or maybe some new things that we want to cultivate, like this idea of reconnecting, moving forward throughout the year as we navigate this new chapter in KBC, starting, at May 30th and moving on forward?
Yeah, so I'm hoping that we've used verses like loving God and loving our neighbor and phrases like that, but I'm hoping that we'll go beyond saying those things and really applying those things in a way that creates empathy and compassion for one another. Going forward, this is going to be a difficult time because we don't all agree on the best path forward. We didn't all agree on the best path forward before the pandemic. We didn't agree during the pandemic.
Yeah.
We're not going to agree after the pandemic.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's part of what binds us together is not our political views, our social views, our economic views, but it is Christ. And so as we move into that, my hope is that we'll engender compassion, empathy for one another, and that connectivity will allow us to have some difficult conversations. We're already planning in July and August to do a series, both with our Sunday schools and within worship, about how do we have some of these conversations.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that will be a value that we bring.
That's great. Some people might be watching wanting to know, well, what about Sunday school? What about the youth? What about children, small groups, all these other things? We're really just spending this time for worship.
Primarily, yeah.
As we continue on, we'll have more information. Maybe you enjoyed this. Maybe this was really helpful. And if so, let us know. Shoot us an email or leave a comment. And maybe we'll do this again to provide some more information, maybe this discussion based, if you've made it towards the end of the video. Okay, and finally, is there anything else that you want to share with us as a church, about the past year or about where we're going in the future? Is there anything else we've missed or something that you want to share extra?
Yeah, I don't know that we've missed anything, but I would say I think Kirkwood Baptist Church has done a great job of finding a way to navigate through this pandemic with care and grace for one another. I felt it as the senior pastor here. I've talked to others who have felt the same thing of we're really trying to navigate this as best as possible. And I realize just watching this video stirs up all kinds of emotions for people. Some people are happy, some people are sad, some people are anxious, all of that. But what we can do going forward is find ways to walk through this together. We may not always agree on the path, but we can walk the path together.
Well, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. This was fun. I hope you enjoyed it. And hopefully we'll do this again and go from there.
Sounds great. Thanks.